They're lovable losers that have made a decades-long habit of falling short. The vast majority of their fans, they weren't alive the last time their team won the title. Yes, let the conversation be about the Cleveland Indians. Everyone else can wring their hands over the Cubs. Today, let's talk Cleveland.
Baseball's World Series champions, Cleveland Indians, swing into action.
We're coming up on 70 years since the Indians last won the World Series. Those have been years filled with misery and some heartbreak. I mean, Charlie Sheen might be the player most closely associated with the franchise. But you wouldn't know it this year. The Indians have won with simply superior baseball. As long as it's been since the Tribe has won, this season hasn't been overwhelmed by talk of curses needing reversing or goats, Billy or otherwise. Maybe that's what happens when the Cavaliers win and the city's title drought is ended. The pressure dissolves. And maybe that's what happens when the present is so good the past becomes irrelevant. The old Northeast Ohio joke went like this. What are two things you never see in Cleveland? Answer, a victory parade in the sky. Can't vouch for the sky, but thanks to their baseball team, Cleveland is games away from its second victory parade of 2016.
And after last night, the Indians are now just 3 wins away from ending their 68-year World Series drought. Hey there and welcome to SI Now. It's Wednesday, October 26th, and I'm Ryan Aselta in today for Maggie Gray. Behind a historic performance on the mound, the Indians strike first and grab Game 1 of the World Series. Let's begin with the Fall Classic and welcome in SI writer Albert Chen. And Albert, Indians pitcher Corey Kluber set a World Series record, striking out 8 Cubs over the first 3 innings. He ends up going 6 scoreless innings, striking out 9. Now, Kluber was pulled after just 88 pitches here. How serious is Terry Francona considering bringing him back in Game 4?
Oh, I think he's very serious. And, Ryan, you mentioned the key number there, 88 pitches. I mean, if he had gone out and thrown 120 pitches, a stressful start last night, I think it's a very different situation where it's not quite as realistic to bring him back on short rest. But, you know, Corey Kluber, having spent some time with this guy, I mean, pound for pound, he is like the strongest guy in the Cleveland clubhouse. I mean, just an absolute machine. I don't think there's too much of a concern about this guy coming back on short rest. But what adds to really the confidence that they'll have is those 88 pitches. You know, as you mentioned, scoreless, and really pretty much stress-free after the Indians got that lead. I mean, you could not have scripted it any better if you were the Indians.
He said after the game that he'll pitch whenever he's asked to pitch. So how much trouble could the Cubs be in if they have to face Kluber possibly 3 times in this series?
Well, that was always kind of the dynamic we knew about going into this, was that it was Corey Kluber and then quite a drop-off in that rotation after that. I mean, really, if you look at last night's game, I mean, it really was a must-win for the Indians. I mean, if that Cubs team had won last night, I mean, you could have started talking about the parade and the celebration because the Cubs were going to be well on their way. Well, it's going to be trickier than that. I think with Kluber looming in Game 4, you know, the pressure now is on the Cubs. You know, what can they do here in Game 2 with Jake Arrieta going into the mound? And then you don't want to head into Wrigley, obviously, down 2-0. That's not an ideal situation. So I would not call this a must-win game for Chicago quite yet, because this team is, the best team in baseball. So talented that I would never count them out. But this is a very, very important game for them. There's no question about it.
Yeah, no doubt the pressure is on Chicago right now. Now, Game 1 gave us a new Mr. October. It came in the form of Roberto Perez. The Indians catcher earns our adrenaline performance presented by Toyota Let's Go Places. Perez belts not 1, but 2 home runs in Game 1 after hitting just 3 all season. Albert, when you see this kind of performance by the Indians' 9-hitter, does it make you think the stars might be aligning for Cleveland in this series?
Well, certainly in Perez's situation. I mean, that is absolute. I mean, you could not have imagined that this would happen from a guy who is really known for his pitch framing and his defense. And, you know, what he does behind the plate is really the value that he gives to this team. I mean, 2 home runs. I mean, that's completely ridiculous. But I will say that this is what the Indians are all about, and you can call it stars being aligned or luck. But Terry Francona just does a tremendous job of putting these guys into positions to succeed because he uses platoon advantages so well. You talked about Perez, but also Lonnie Chisenhall in the eighth hole. Guys like Brandon Guyer, I mean, you can go on and on. So a little bit of good fortune, luck, if you want to call it that, but it's also this Cleveland Indians way where guys just have a knack for stepping up because they are put in a position to succeed.
You mentioned Terry Francona. Tito followed his postseason script. He went to Andrew Miller in that seventh inning. Though the lefty got in some trouble, he escaped a bases-loaded jam there. Seeing his continued dominance this postseason, Albert, is it time to start legitimately comparing him to some of the all-time great relievers we've seen?
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean, this is someone who's already got an ALCS MVP. I mean, look, anyone in baseball knew that he was an elite reliever these past few seasons in New York and in Baltimore. I think what kept him under the radar was that he was not a closer. This is a, setup guy, middle relief guy. And what we're seeing, what's kind of changed this October because of Andrew Miller is we're seeing the value, maybe perhaps even more valuable than those ninth inning guys are these guys who can go an extra few innings. And look, he's already closing in on the record for most innings in a postseason. I think he'll get there, and I think he's going to break a few more records along the way. Andrew Miller, I mean, just an absolutely incredible October.
All right, Albert, let's talk about this Cubs lineup, which we've seen go quiet at times this postseason. Dexter Fowler, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo combined 0 for 11 last night with 4 strikeouts. Now, those are the type of numbers we saw from these guys prior to breaking out in Game 4 of the NLCS. Could you see a situation where Joe Maddon tries to shake up the batting order tonight?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, he shook up the batting order going into last night. I mean, when you had, as you mentioned, Schwarber and then Hayward sits last night, I mean, there were some kind of big decisions that he made. And, I don't think Joe Maddon certainly is not going to be panicking at this point. You just faced some great pitching last night. But he will, I think, mix it up a little bit, and that's going to be based on matchups. I think there's a good chance you'll see Jorge Soler in the lineup because of the way he faces pitchers like Trevor Bauer. So I think Maddon, not as a result of panicking, but playing the matchups, which is what he's done all year, I think there will be changes to this lineup tonight, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the mad scientist concocts tonight.
You mentioned the matchups. The pitching matchup tonight, Jake Arrieta opposes Trevor Bauer on the mound. Now, Arrieta goes for the Cubs after struggling in his last outing against the Dodgers, while Bauer is back on the mound after that early exit in the ALCS following that drone injury. Who do you like? Who has the edge tonight on the pitcher mound, Albert?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to give the edge, no question, to Arrieta and the Cubs. Going against Bauer, everyone still has questions about his health. I mean, really, how many innings is he going to last? But as we've seen time and time again with this Cleveland team, it really isn't purely about the starting pitcher matchup. I mean, if Bauer goes more than 5 innings, I think that is going to be very surprising to a lot of people. I think if Cleveland can get 4 solid innings out of Trevor Bauer, they'd be thrilled to go to that bullpen and play the matchups. I think Arrieta is going to pitch very well tonight, but Bauer, look, we talked about the drop-off between Kluber and the rest of the rotation. Bauer had a very nice season, had stretches where he was close to an elite pitcher. So he's got the upside. And the injury does kind of put into question what we'll get out of him tonight. But I think the Indians are fine with going to that bullpen pretty early in the night.
Cold, wet weather expected tonight in Cleveland. They've moved the game up an hour. We are looking forward to Game 2 tonight at Progressive Field. SI writer Albert Chen, thanks for being with us.
All right, thanks, Ryan.
All right, well, the Indians may lead this series 1-0, but as we know, there is still a lot of baseball left to be played. No one knows this better than Indians fans who have suffered some of the most heartbreaking collapses in baseball history. Here's SI senior editor Ted Keith with a look at the 5 biggest collapses in Indians postseason history.
1954. Led by a pitching staff that featured 3 Hall of Famers in Early Wynn, Bob Lemon, and Bob Feller, the Indians rolled to 111 wins, but they won 0 in the World Series, falling victim to a sweep at the hands of the New York Giants and their already legendary center fielder Willie Mays. New York won 97 games that season, 14 fewer than Cleveland. making it the biggest upset in a World Series sweep in baseball history. 1997. Cleveland made it back to the Fall Classic, this time against the upstart Marlins, and carried a 2-1 lead into the 9th inning of Game 7 with star closer Jose Mesa on the mound. But Florida tied the game on a sacrifice fly by Craig Counsell, and 2 innings later, Counsell reached base on an error by second baseman Tony Fernandez before coming around to score the winning run on a base hit by Edgar Renteria. 1999. Cleveland jumped out to a 2-0 lead in the best-of-5 series against the Red Sox, but then lost 3 straight games by the unbelievable scores of 9-3, 23-7, and 12-8. And in Game 5, ace Pedro Martinez came out of the bullpen and held a team that had been the first in baseball since 1950 to score 1,000 runs without so much as a hit for 6 innings to advance to the ALCS. 2001. With 116 wins, the 2001 Seattle Mariners tied the 1906 Cubs for the most in baseball history. Cleveland won 91 games, a 25-game gap, but nevertheless took 2 of the first 3 games in the series. But the Indians managed just 3 runs and 9 hits the rest of the way, losing the series in 5 games. 2007. Cleveland jumped out to a 3-1 lead on Boston in the ALCS and had ace CC Sabathia, that year's AL Cy Young winner, on the mound at home to start Game 5 with a chance to wrap up the pennant. But Sabathia was outpitched by Josh Beckett, sending the series back to Fenway Park, where the Red Sox routed the Indians twice to capture the pennant.
All right, to the NBA now, which kicked off the new season last night with 3 games on the schedule, while the defending champion Cavaliers picked up where they left off with an opening night win. A team you're hearing a lot about as possible contenders in the East is the Boston Celtics. Here's a first-person account on the construction of this year's Celtics by Boston's president of basketball operations, Danny Ainge.
I know Golden State is a heavy favorite, as we were a heavy favorite in '08. I think in recruiting free agents, we realized, I think that what we already realized before, that every player is different. Some players value different things in the free agent process. I thought we did a very good job in pitching our organization to Al Horford and Kevin Durant this past summer. And we didn't get both of them, but I think that we were a team that they both strongly considered and that Al chose. Well, Al is a class act, first and foremost. He's a complete player. He can shoot from the outside, he can score on the inside, he can pass, and in multiple positions. Coach Stevens likes the bigs making a lot of decisions in our offense, and he really likes Al at the elbows making decisions with the ball also. And Al also has a low post game, especially if the teams are switching and he gets matchups that he can take advantage of. He can score on the low post. Jalen and Terry Rozier are going to be the 2 surprises. I think that we saw Terry Rozier have a terrific summer. We saw Jalen have a terrific finish to Summer League, but those guys so far early in training camp have really been terrific players for us, and have proven that they belong on the court with Isaiah and Avery and Jay Crowder and Marcus Smart, and that's saying something. I see Isaiah Thomas, Avery Bradley, and Al Horford as all-star caliber players. Isaiah has improved his defense. He's always been a terrific offensive player, and he was one of the most efficient players offensively. We have a lot of guys that are not even close to their primes, and then we have a young player in Jaylen Brown who I think is going to get better and better as the season goes along. So I like this team a lot. Our guys play really hard, and we do have good depth. If we stay healthy, and how well we shoot the ball will be a big part of our success this year.
Well, remarkable, improbable, iconic. Those are the words used to describe the life and career of Brett Favre. He was wildly popular and arguably the last of his kind in the NFL. Well, recently, Maggie Gray sat down with Jeff Pearlman, who authors Gunslinger, the new book which chronicles the life and Hall of Fame career of number 4.
Jeff, you've written about Walter Payton, you've written about the Dallas Cowboys, you've written about the Showtime Lakers, 86 Mets. What made profiling Brett Favre unique?
It was weird. It was like it was a weird timing book, right? Like I feel like if I wrote this book 3 years ago, it would have been a disaster because I think we were all so fed up with the retirement. Weren't you fed up? You know what I mean? He's going to retire. He's not going to retire. You're retired. You're unretired. And then there's like this fatigue over it. And then I kind of thought like, I love heroes kind of like Walter Payton, like Favre, who we feel like we know, but we really don't. Like we repeat the same 5 stories over and over again. And then you look and you're like, wow, there's actually a lot here. And there's a lot of interesting stuff here. You just have to dig into it. So I kind of saw him as this guy who we repeated the same 5 stories about, but we didn't really know that much about.
Yeah, and you dive very deep into this book. Earlier this year, we saw Brett get inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, first ballot. How improbable was that, knowing his history?
It was unbelievable. I mean, you know, he grew up in this small podunk town in Hancock County, Mississippi. His dad was a head football coach, Hancock North Central. Brett was supposed to be the starter as a sophomore. He got mono. He missed a year. He's playing for his dad, Irv Favre, who believes only in running the football. So then he has his kid with a nuclear arm. You know, kid can throw 60 yards as a sophomore, and he never throws. So you have this dad who's like, we're going to hand off the ball. That's what we're going to do. So he's on no radar anywhere. Nobody cares about him. There's no interest in him. He's not like lightly recruited. He is non-existently recruited. And Southern Miss has this new assistant coach, Mark McHale, who comes along. He's hired late in the recruiting process, and he's literally asking different coaches, is there anyone I'm missing? I need, you know, and some guy's like, well, there's this kid at Hancock North Central. He never throws the ball, but he's got a huge arm. He might be worth going to see. He goes to see Irv Favre. Irv Favre is like, this is great. My kid's awesome. You're going to love him. Okay, I'm going to come to the game. He goes to the game. Irv has him throw 4 times.
Oh, my gosh.
Scout's like, what the hell just happened here? Irv like, come again. I promise this time he's going to throw. Five passes. But he sees him on the sideline, like winging the ball. And he keeps telling the coaches, I'm telling you, there's something about this kid. He's got an arm. So last minute, a linebacker from Georgia backs out. And Southern Miss has 1 scholarship left. Last minute, the head coach is like, you know what? We can always make him a safety. And that's how Brett Favre goes to Southern Miss.
It's unbelievable because there are so many moments, and you outline them all, where Brett's career and life, quite frankly, could have been completely derailed.
Oh, yeah.
What were some of the biggest obstacles that he hurdled?
I mean, there are a million of them. He, before senior year he was a Heisman Trophy candidate. You know, they put money in to make him a Heisman Trophy candidate. And before senior year, he got in a really bad car accident near his home in Mississippi. He ended up having blockage and then had 30 inches of his intestine removed.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. It's as nasty as it sounds. And so he actually missed the first game of his senior year. And he was going to, at first they thought he was going to die. Then they thought he was going to miss his senior year. Comes back to play Alabama at Legion Field. He's 30 pounds underweight, and he comes back and he beats Alabama 27-24, 30 pounds underweight after almost dying 2 months later. It's one of the most amazing, improbable stories ever.
Steve Young recently told us that Aaron Rodgers called him when he was backing up Favre, asking Young for advice because Young obviously had to replace a legend in Joe Montana.
Yeah.
If you compare Steve Young and Joe Montana to Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, Montana and Young would seem like best friends. Can you describe what the relationship was like from Favre's point of view?
All right, this is how I explain it. This is going to sound weird, but this is really how I explain it. When I started my career at the Nashville Tennessean, I was this young, cocky jackass coming straight out of college. I thought I was like the man. And you see older reporters and they think you're an idiot, you know, and they're right, you are an idiot because you're cocky and they've been doing it a while and you think you're better. And that is the exact parallel that I keep thinking about with this Rodgers thing. Like, Rodgers coming out of Cal, he thinks he's the man, he thinks he should have been the #1 pick, he slips in the draft. Favre has been there a long time, and here you are, you're Favre, you're in your mid-30s, you've never been challenged. Aaron Rodgers shows up, he's super arrogant, he's just young and dumb. It's not like he's a jerk, he's just young and dumb, and he can't read people that well yet. And Favre one day is sitting there reading his newspaper, and Rodgers walks in and he says, "Hey, good morning, Grandpa." And you're Favre, and you're like, who the hell is this kid? And you're Rodgers, and you're like, who the hell is this old man? You know, and there was like, it wasn't like they were trying, there's the thing, Favre was not helpful at all.
Not 0%.
Which is interesting because he has the reputation of being one of the best teammates that anyone has ever had. Yet when it came to Rodgers, he would not help him.
Because he felt challenged. And he also, he was always haunted by replacing Don Majkowski when Majkowski got hurt. And he saw how quick it goes. Like Majkowski was the man, and then he was hurt, and you literally never heard of the guy again. He basically was gone. And I think I know Favre is very haunted by that. So this guy comes along, and yeah, Favre's a great teammate, but I'm not going to help you take my job. It was just this really frosty, this is my job, I want your job thing.
Yeah, I mean, tremendous story. And we know that these bad feelings lingered for a very long time between at least Favre and the organization, absolutely. And they've just started to reconcile things. I mean, how much did the course of the future of the Packers change when Aaron Rodgers came into that locker room?
Yeah, hugely. And I don't care what anyone says. Rodgers has never forgiven Favre for that treatment, and he remembers it. I know people who are close with Rodgers who say he has nothing but dislike for Favre, and they have nothing in common. That's the thing. The only thing in common is they're both the quarterbacks of the Packers, but one's from California, one's from Mississippi. The age difference, the approach, everything about it, it's just two very different guys in two different worlds,
And he and Aaron Rodgers just never on the same page.
Just weren't the same guy.
Not the same
guys.
guy. Jeff, congratulations on the book Gunslinger. It's a fantastic read. You get to feel like you really know and understand Brett Favre, which I know was the goal.
It was. Thank you.
Great stories. Thanks to Maggie and Jeff. And thanks to you for watching this Wednesday edition of SI Now. Tomorrow, two-time Olympic boxing gold medalist Clarissa Shields joins the show. That's at 1 p.m. Eastern. Until then, you can keep up with all the latest news on SI.com. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. Have a great day.